Spontaneously be funny.
Fucking all right. It's a bit of a stretch, but okay. I'll start recording.
Once again, Dave, here we are, me and you.
I'm the mainstay, man.
Well, hey, I had a good reason, and all of your reasons are invalid. Anytime
Because
you're
I don't
off.
have kids, yeah, I'm familiar with the with the
Well,
clause.
I'm glad you've accepted our gaslighting, and
Not really, Sam. It's just I have other things in my life to worry about than you and Ross being cunts. Information I've had for 15 years, so I feel like that's on me at this point.
very true.
You know, like if I keep expecting you to change, it's kind of a me problem now.
That's the definition of insanity, is it not? I mean, I think that's...
It really is. Expecting your friends to be less scumbaggy.
Yeah. Just stop being an idiot.
Fucking stop being a loser. Get better friends.
Get better friends. But the problem is that you're now in your 30s, which means the ability for you to make any new friends is literally impossible. Yeah, you can make acquaintances, even friendly acquaintances, but you're never going to get the same level of mass collective hysteria that I think we offer.
No, that's very true. And I've also got to confront the reality that if you
You're
guys
not that
are my
interesting.
friends,
Yeah.
well, what? How bad can I must be pretty bad. Like if you guys are that bad, I must be pretty awful. Ooh.
Yeah. That's a bit of self-reflection, isn't it? Oof. Jeez.
If you consent to put up with me,
It's a circle jerk. That's what it is.
Absolutely. Just more sexually charged.
Wow.
So let's do this clap business. 45?
Oh, I have time that is not ready, and I'm
52?
already recording. No idea. Hold on. Delete that track. Right, recording. Time dot is 52. 5 seconds. Time dot is has ads now. What's going on with this?
Fuck you, that's what.
Jesus, we must be using it too much.
Must be.
Right, let's make sure that we are correct with the microphone and we're getting it right. That's lovely. Just for that, I'm going to go and piss, so you can just wait.
Great. This is a fantastic YouTube video, by the way.
Or start. Yeah.
Fantastic YouTube video. Just me looking at the camera.
And entertain our audience.
I'm just going to set my phones down. I'm not here for that.
I'm back in POG form.
Great.
Let's do it.
We ready?
Mm-hmm.
Fucking Ross, eh?
Every time.
Shocker. Hello, and welcome to this week's super high energy episode of the Imaginary Movie Podcast, a podcast where we, week by week, break down a famous financial crash that's happened in our lifetime. We'll tell you in 5 minutes which one we're talking about. My name's David.
Hi, David. My name's Sam, and The Big Short 2 coming soon to cinemas near you.
And the world. So this week, Sam and I, and does Ross get credit for watching this film allegedly?
Did he watch it? Did he? Or did he just say he watched it and then bailed because he couldn't be asked? You decide, listener.
He's definitely done that before.
You decide. Yes. But what did we watch?
You decide. We watched, against my objections, for which I will justify. I will. You make that face at me. I will jump down this camera and beat you to death.
Yeah.
I will explain myself. We watched The Big Short from 2015. The Adam McKay movie chronicling the 2008 the housing crisis.
Yes, the credit crunch, as it was called here in
famous
the UK.
Taxpayer bailout. Spoilers, I guess.
Yeah, just like real foundational event in our lives that kind of shaped.
We met in 2008, just to.
Yeah, in the midst of all this,
in the midst of all this,
and the impact of the 2008 financial crisis is living with us right now. I think it's something like if you were born, if you were millennial, if you came of age during this time, we're like £10,000 worse off than we would have been because we haven't had any wage growth for more than a decade now. For nearly 2 decades, and we're about to go into another shit show of a recession.
Hey,
capitalism working as intended.
You saying Liz Truss isn't going to save the economy?
No. Oh, topical. No, I'm going to say that she's going to tinker around the edges and ultimately deport immigrants, and everyone's going to lap it up, and it's going to be fucking awful. That's what I'm going to predict. Come back in 6 months when she's been deposed.
As this movie says, what will happen is what always happens is that conservatives will blame immigrants and poor people, and the taxpayer will foot the bill.
Yes, and that's where we are now. You had objections to watching this film. I would say completely unfounded.
I'm sorry, Sam. Let's try and be reasonable with each other here, because I'm willing to admit that I think we can make a fine podcast out of this. And I actually enjoyed watching this movie for the second time, probably even more than I enjoyed it the first time.
So what's your fucking problem then?
Listen to me. I was afraid that this would and will be, and I'm guaranteed that this is what it's going to be.
Okay.
This would be a really dry, really angry conversation about how Wall Street bankers fucked all of us, right?
Yep.
Which is fine. But I like to keep it light. I want to watch like a fucking late 90s sex comedy that reminds me of a time before the world ended.
Yeah. Well, I think that's a completely reasonable point of view. Also, though, as a counterpoint, fuck you. But also, I think that sometimes we need to let the anger out. We need to let the despair at growing up in a time when wage growth is a mere dream, and that we need to really just go back to our economic roots to understand the shit show that we're in. And I don't think there is a better movie about economics that exists ever that's better than this, because I think this is one of the most competent, funny, engaging, and enraging movies that you will ever watch. I think it's such a great film, and this is why I wanted to watch it again. This is my second watch, is because it's one of those stories that grabs you because it's real. It's one of the performances I think that are great throughout, and it's the filmmaking in this is like fucking amazing. Adam McKay doing his thing.
Well, this is the second Adam McKay movie we've done. We did the vastly inferior but trying to go for the same sort of thing, Don't Look Up.
It's actually the third Adam McKay movie. I'm going to correct you there because we did The Other Guys, which is a pretty poor. Well, go back and listen to it. I didn't.
Average. It was an average comedy, but it's not trying to say anything, Sam.
I didn't. I know. I didn't love that. I didn't love that. I thought Don't Look Up was like it was an attempt, but it was a little
40% of a good movie. Like
Yes.
there was 40% of that was really good and introspective and kind of what this movie was. But like, whereas The Big Short is this wonderful film that's not character driven really at all, about a real life event that's happened. Don't Look Up is more of like
it's a bit more.
This is what would happen
Yeah.
if a crisis happened during our
A bit more
current government.
conceptual.
And it's like, why don't you hold your water for 3 months until COVID hits, Adam McKay? And then like you'll have a real world event to make a movie about.
And that was our complaint, wasn't it? Is that in the context of COVID, in the context of a Trump presidency, which is very much that was based on, but really we kind of all lived, the anti-vaxxer movement. It's just too close to reality.
It's just reality now. Like that's just fake news, all of that. People fucking marching to tell us that immigrants and poor people are stealing their jobs and Trump is somehow a man who should be respected. Like that's all happening.
Yeah.
Right. Well, not right now,
the
but
White House.
at the time when that movie came out.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's all there, isn't it? But what I think we should, obviously Adam McKay, Anchorman as well, and
vastly different movie.
Very different. I think he's a good director. I think he's a good director, and he's got a strong idea of how to present movies. And actually, we have referenced The Big Short in quite a few of our films before this point because we have been talking about movies that know they are movies. What did we do last week? It's hard to remember the things that happened before us. Well, you think about that, or we've maybe look it up.
Did we do Iron Man?
We did Iron Man. And during the discussion about Iron Man, we talked about how, I felt that I wanted the movie to use the techniques that we see in this film, which is voiceover, characters looking at the camera and explaining to us as we see in this. We get to see lots of, overlays. We get to see freeze frames. We get to see Margot Robbie in a bath explaining the CDOs to us.
Who remembers? I can certainly do with Margot Robbie in a bath explaining more things to me.
She's explaining these collateral debt organizations, whatever they are, whatever the things, what the acronym stands for. It's a movie that knows it's a movie and is willing to break the fourth wall. It's willing to do things and present its story in a way that is surprising. And that is a thing that I love about this movie. And even the second time, it's surprising. You go, oh, I was not expecting Margot Robbie in a bath. I was not expecting Anthony Bourdain, Selena Gomez to be explaining these very complicated financial instruments.
It's very competent filmmaking, I think, generally. I think we should maybe talk through this film a little bit and maybe use that to sort of organize our discussion, because I think otherwise we maybe do that thing where we talk about things we like and it's very diffuse. I also do want to talk about the financial crash a bit and like maybe about how this movie takes an incredibly complex like event and issue and by the dint of having Margot Robbie drinking champagne in a bubble bath explaining it to you, manages to, and that's the most reductionist version of that, but it does a really good job, and the writing's very, very good in this, and obviously the direction of the people in the movie. I think Christian Bale's maybe doing a bit. We can talk about performances, but like what it does is, even if you don't know a lot about this, and I didn't really, apart from the broad strokes of like, subprime mortgages and things like that, I think I knew all the bits, but not how they connected, if that makes sense. So I knew about mortgages that are given to anyone regardless of credit with no money up front and they're bad. But I don't think I'd really sort of like understood the A to B to C to D of how does that directly fuck Scottish widows.
Yes, yeah, exactly.
Do you know what I mean? Because that's the real life, like I remember from the news, like, oh, all these pension funds are fucking like, oh, and don't worry though, because everyone got bailed out. So boomers, you're still going to get all your retirement money. Don't worry about it.
Yeah. So this book is based on
millennials. We paid for you to fucking keep your pensions. Good job.
We literally continue to.
We never get to retire, but you can keep your really generous pensions.
Yeah, suck a dick. So this is based on The Big Short Inside the Doomsday Machine, a book by Michael Lewis, who and obviously it's exploring the housing bubble. And this is like this starting point. I think you're right. We were what 18 or so ish
Too young
when
to know much about the housing market,
no,
but old enough that
exactly.
we were like, proper like teenage edgelords, and we were reading fucking like,
The
Left
New
Wing
Yorker.
Media and learning about stuff and like, oh yeah, well the subprime mortgage. It was that peak, like
The
that very
Atlantic,
base level of when
Vanity
you're
Fair.
18, you learn that the core facts of something and then talk about it as if you're like a fucking financial expert.
Yeah.
So
Which funnily I was actually when I was 18, but wow. Some say savant. I don't know.
international jet setter in Carlisle.
Exactly. So in The Big Short, in 2006 and 2007, a group of investors bet against the US mortgage market. In their research, they discover how flawed and corrupt the market is. Now, first thing that I want to point out is that we've got as Wikipedia helpfully sets out, we've got three concurrent stories. We've got Scion Capital with Christian Bale. We've got Front Point Partners. That's hard to say. And with with Steve Carell, and we've got Brownfield Capital with two other guys. I don't know their names. These three guys, and this is their stories running together. And in reality, they didn't know each other, but we have a little bit of crossover in it. But that's
none of them meet Bale. They talk about him, but that's the one, and we'll get into why I think that is. But that's the one storyline that doesn't intersect.
Yes. Now, just from a point of filmmaking, these three group of men are basically betting against the US economy and people's mortgages. Like that's what the film is about. It's insane
to understand these things exist, Sam.
I know, but
obviously you're like, go on.
But just because I think it's interesting from a storytelling point of view. It's interesting from a point of view of like your protagonists in this. They're basically the bad guys in a sense because they are saying, yeah, it's going to fail, and we're gonna use this short mechanism to make loads and loads of money when it fails, when people lose their homes, when as we see, when the families is living in their car, it's awful, horrible, heart-wrenching stories. These people all get rich off it. The banks, like, they fucked up in a way. But I just think it's amazing that we are rooting for these guys. We're rooting for these guys when they're capitalists too.
Yeah, but the way that the movie does it, and I think that I don't necessarily disagree with what the movie sets out, but the way the movie does it is basically to say that these guys are like shorting the market and all of that, but they're also kind of like challenging the lack of regulation, and it's almost like this investigative thing where Steve Carell especially is kind of like on this he calls it a crusade, and he's going to the ratings agencies and he's challenged them on what the fuck's going on. He's going to conferences and shouting at people, like the kids and Brad Pitt are like, Brad Pitt is saying to them, it's because it's so corrupt and blah 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 and all of these reasons, and so it's kind of like framing these people as like almost like investigative journalists who just happen to also be making millions and millions and millions of dollars.
I know. Yeah. And that's where I think there is a lot of like, it's great filmmaking because it lulls you into this sense of, these guys are fighting the system. They're fighting Goldman Sachs. They're fighting, they're fighting Lehman Brothers. Like, they're going to take down from the inside. Oh, no. They're making loads and loads of money off this. And they're going to, profit all the way to the failed banks. So it's like, it's a funny framing for a movie, and it really, really works. And I think that when you actually then get into the plot and how all this unravels, it's a mystery movie, isn't it? It's a road movie in some degrees, and it's a sense of like we're trying to unravel what's happening, and there's all these different factors that are going on, and then we get to see that in a really, really cool like presentation. The presentational aspect of this movie, I think, is top notch. But we're still rooting for these fucking evil capitalists who are like, fuck, the mom and pop store, as they say, are being decimated, and people's losing their house. Yeah, that stripper's got 5 mortgages, and she didn't have to prove any of her income, which is fucking mental. Mental.
Well, that's the core of the problem, isn't it? And I think maybe we should go through this just very quickly.
Yes.
Like the core of the issues, because the movie's called The Big Short.
Yes.
Obviously, you've seen the movie, but just in case. So you
short what?
Exactly. So people are shorting these investment funds, aren't they? So these CDOs are kind of like they're a big bag of mortgages.
Yes. Yes.
You need to agree with me. That's how this is going
to work. So the CDO is a collateralized
big bag of mortgages. Yeah.
So basically, all the crap mortgages and some
all the mortgages generally. I think
brought together.
Predates crap mortgages.
Yeah, because basically, then you've got a mechanism on which people can gamble, and that's what it is really. They can say to a investment bank, I think they're going to go up. I think the value of those mortgages is going to go up. And the bank will say, cool, we'll give you really, really crap odds on that because, it's a mortgage, of course, like over time, over 30 years, it's going to roughly go up.
But the reason why the system is in place is obviously banks generally don't have all that. Do you know what I mean? All in a traditional sense, banks wouldn't necessarily have the the cash reserves to put up the money for millions of houses, for instance, millions of mortgages, because that's in essence what a bank is doing, is lending you the money. In this situation, and this is something that obviously, I'm not a banker, I've not worked in mortgages. Our friend Joe would have a lot to say about this. But so instead of the bank having to front the money, the bank is essentially selling the debt to an investor, like you said, who buys into the CDO, the fund, and they make a pittance. It's not a lot every year, but a bit of growth. And because
it's about risk, isn't it?
It's a mortgage, isn't it?
Yeah.
Because if you bought a house, in fact, you have bought a house, you've put money down, right? So you already own a decent wedge of that house. Mm-hmm. So if you lost your job and suddenly it was a struggle to make the mortgage payments, moving out would be kind of like the last thing, like you would have sold everything else you owned before you moved out. Because if you default on the mortgage, you lose everything.
Except
but if you didn't owe dick on the house, if you didn't own anything of the house, you've made 2 payments, so you own nothing, and you're like, well, fuck it, I'll just go rent somewhere. I don't give a shit.
And what there's a line there where someone's got 110% LTV, which is loan to value, right? Which means the bank paid them 10% of the value of the house in cash so they bought the house, and then they were given money to presumably and this used to be a thing. Even in the UK, this used to be a thing where you could get basically a loan tied in with the mortgage, and so you'd 100. So you would have to you'd have to pay back £10,000 worth of your mortgage just to get 100% equity, 1% equity, and then obviously your interest on top of that. So anyway, financial instruments are fucking crazy. But basically this is gambling, isn't it? This is gambling. This is the whole system. And later on, when we get to see this thing called a synthetic CDO, and this is why I love this movie, is because me and you, 2 fucking idiots, are sitting there having in-depth conversations about these bizarre financial instruments. But when we're talking about a synthetic CDO, which is I'm going to bet on the outcome of someone else buying a CDO, and on and on and on and on and on. It's like this is what fucking Marx was talking about when he was decrying the fact that there is no labor, there is nothing has been created, no one is hammering steel in a factory, and yet people are getting rich because they have the capital, they have the ability to put money to this, to make a gamble, and then it pays off, and then they get money and nothing was produced. And you're just saying, fucking hell, guys. I know everyone wants to get rich and blah, 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 but we are in that's a crazy system. That's a crazy system that it was ever even conceived and then pushed to the limit is as we saw in 2008 is crazy.
It's just insane, and the biggest thing is that, like you said, Sam, it's all these, it's all of these people who are bought into the system, paid by the system. All of the people in financial institutions in the government are all either previously from banking, or they're going back to banking, or they're taking consultancy jobs as well.
We're all built into it, aren't we? We have to be. If
But
you want to get
what I'm saying is that none of these people, because of their own self-interest, I really do think this is the key thing behind the 2008 crash. None of these people looked at these figures and said, how in an industry worth, I'm picking a number here, but how in an industry worth 100 billion is there 300 billion billion dollars worth of money moving around? Like, that's a problem. Because
well,
suddenly,
CDOs
if it collapses, that suddenly, where is all this money coming from? Like, it doesn't exist. It's made up.
And as the film says, CDOs became more valuable than the actual physical assets of the houses themselves. That's before the crash.
Yeah.
That's not like it fell away. It's like literally the gambling on the value of the US mortgage market was so high that it actually exceeded by several factors the value of.
What's the guy in the casino towards the end of the movie saying? Yeah,
he said, a teller. He's an economist, isn't he? I can't remember his name. So
yeah. But because all the smart people whose job it is to fucking like say, hey, should we maybe regulate or step in? And like, everyone's making too much money. It's a fucking shit show.
Yeah, it's insane. Now, before we just rant and basically talk about, before we get into full, let's bring down.
Well, I want to talk about the movie. I want to talk about the movie.
Gas. Exactly. Let's talk about the movie. So we got and you mentioned about no one was really doubting this. No one was really considering it until we get introduced to Michael Burry, played by Christian Bale. Now, you had a little dig at Christian Bale a minute ago. So I'd like to explain yourself, please.
Love Christian Bale. Don't get me wrong. He seems like hard work.
Oh yeah.
No. Shut up. Hear my point.
It's a
say
joke to
one
you,
statement and have you.
No, I'm being Christian Bale in the movie when he was.
No, you're not being You're not being nearly violent enough. Like, you're going to shout at me and throw me down the stairs.
Good for you. Good for you.
He seems like an absolute nightmare to work with, and I think that he has some wonderful performances, and he's one of the. I also really dislike method actors because I think it's acting. Why do you need to like? I think with this trivia I read about this was that he got a pair of shorts and a shirt from the real guy, and that's what he wore for like 6 weeks or something daft like that.
Yeah,
to get into his mindset.
As Laurence Olivier said to Dustin Hoffman, "My dear boy, why don't you just try acting?"
Yeah. And that's fine. I think in some performances it lends itself really well. That boxing film with Marky Mark, excellent performance.
Yeah.
That, like, you need an actor who's going to do that deep dive and like really capture this personality. This movie, though, maybe you could just come and do a performance, Christian Bale, and I think that's the reason that you don't see this character intersect with anyone else. Because I bet the shoots for Christian Bale went on for months, and the rest of the cast obviously were like, nah, let's not have
we don't have time for this.
Apparently, down to him insisting that he did the even though he was injured, so was something wrong, he'd done something to his arm or leg or something, like the swimming scenes, he insisted on that being him. And it's like, that's where I'm reading it and I'm like, you see a lot of this with Christian Bale, and it comes through in his performance where you're like, you're obviously trying a little too hard to kind of capture this person, and that's fine. Obviously, you need to have a character and the characterization and a bit of backstory for me to like empathize with the character. But at the same time, I think it's the one thing in this movie that you could maybe like just shorten that a bit. There's a bit too much of him being like this genius savant, and the movie, I don't know how much of this is from the book as well. Like, the movie's very like fucking, oh, this guy's amazing, he's a genius, he's the cleverest man on earth, he's the guy who figured this out. And I'm not debunking any of that. I'm just saying that, like, in the context of the story that you're trying to tell, you can maybe do a little bit less of that.
Yeah. And there's a there's a spectrum thing going on here as well, isn't there? Which I think that the real Michael Burry has acknowledged. Like, you know, he doesn't have he can't have proper conversations with people. He makes things awkward, you know. So, and Bale's obviously is trying to reflect that as well. And you know, that's part of life. That's the way people are, and it's good that that's there. But it does feel a little bit one note, doesn't it? I think from him, I do get it. It's a bit. It's kind of like, I guess you're going to go for something like that, and it's going to be there, isn't it? You know, that type of performance is always going to be. It's always going to be impactful, and maybe not in necessarily a way that lends to the overall story. Perhaps
I don't think it detracts as such. I just think that if you maybe just cut 5% of the Christian Bale stuff, like, and then it leads to a tighter movie, and maybe like it's obviously the story feels it's important to highlight that this is the guy that kind of saw this coming, and all the other characters get this from him, and he kind of like starts the Big Short and all these people sort of investing, and then you get the Ryan Gosling character who's, I think, the scummiest of the scumbags, really, who's doing it all for a fat bonus check. He can get, what is he, 47 million or something?
Oh, Fields, I mean the old guy. He gets 400. The old guy, who is having to go at Christian Bale.
No, I mean Ryan Gosling's character, the banker.
Oh yeah, he gets 47 million bonus, but the old guy who's having to go at Christian Bale, he gets $489 million in bonuses in the midst of, you know, half of mortgages being whatever the you know the non-payment rate was. Like, it's just ridiculous. Evil capitalists, all these fucking pricks.
Yeah, and all the people responsible for it walked away with hundreds of millions of dollars. So don't even worry about it.
Oh, it's fine. Everyone's good. But it is good storytelling, though. Let's moving aside the capitalist bastard, because this guy basically has looked at he's done the math. He looked at the numbers. He's figured out that there is a flaw in the system, that he's gone through all of the individual mortgages in these, you know, shit CDOs, as Margot Robbie tells us, and has seen that there is a high-low, LTV, loan to value. There's a number of mispaid 30 payments over and behind, or whatever it is. You know, there's all of this stuff that just shows that there is a fundamental weakness to the mortgage market. And this guy, and in real life, figured it out. He was one of the earliest people.
That's the mystery the movie's solving, isn't it?
Yeah.
Like, that's the. It's not it's not a whodunit, but it's very much like it's like an investigative journalism movie, isn't it?
Yeah,
which do exist, and it's engrossing, and it's interesting to watch this kind of unfold as you get told about this very complex kind of thing. So the Steve Carell's office as well, I think, is probably the more what's the word? The more engaging of the plots, in my opinion.
Yes, and performances as
partly
well.
because of the more ensemble cast. The Bale thing is basically just Bale. You've got the two young guys with Brad Pitt, and they're kind of like insular, and then there's 7 or 8 people in Steve Carell's office, and I think the performances all round are pretty good.
Yeah. It's really,
and they also have the most to do in the movie, I felt, as well. They're the people who go and like investigate, and they're talking to Schmidt from New Girl about like, and that's the stuff that you kind of like. Yes, it's all one thing to talk about all these like high financial institutions and have Margot Robbie explaining CDOs to us and things, but then there's actually the human element of them going and knocking on people's doors and saying,
of getting a lap dance, while he's asking.
Well, for me, it was they knock on the guy's house, and he answers the door with this kid. And he asks him about the house, and he goes, "Oh no, I'm just a tenant. I don't own the house." And he goes, "Oh well," and he mentions about defaulting mortgages, and he goes, "Wait, has my landlord not been paying his mortgage? Because I've been paying my rent." And I was like, "Oh, well, that's harrowing, because that's the reality of life." And it's stuff like that, the little things where the movie kind of takes its punches at like the whole system, and I think it's quite intelligent in that way.
Yeah, it is. And I think those little glimpses into the actual reality, and even actually a little bit of filmmaking techniques, sometimes we get, while there's conversations going on, I think maybe during the bit where where Lehman Brothers is falling, we just get these flashes. We just get these flashes of people, like with all of their belongings on a lawn, or with a cardboard
Yeah.
box in their arms. We get actually quite a lot of again, great presentational filmmaking of like just showing it. We're just going to have a half a second flash of this dramatic picture, of a woman being evicted or whatever it is, and all the way through, it's kind of like the film is quite strongly trying to remind you of the actual human impact of this, and that guy who we see later on. And again, I mean, maybe it's just because we're living in just the worst timeline of financial doom and fucking fuel prices and warm banks where people can go to public buildings to get warm. I mean, fucking kill me. What a world we live in.
I know.
Like, maybe it's just a bit raw, but it's engaging, and it's also not over the top either, because we do get the lightness. Like we get to see the lightness in Steve Carell's character's introduction, where he walks in, and I mean, great storytelling. We understand who this guy is immediately. He's a dickhead. He's a douchebag. He walks in and oh, sorry, yeah, hey, oh, sorry, 2 seconds, I didn't take his call. Like, completely dominating this therapy session. But there's also trauma as well, isn't there? Which is which comes through. And I think that his character, as you say, I think it's probably the most engaging, and it's also he gets the biggest arc almost. He gets the one where he's like trying to fight this. He's really trying to fight the system.
And it's funny placement, obviously, because he's based on real people. And I was reading something, and I don't know how accurate this accuracy statistic is, but allegedly this movie's about 90% ish of this movie is pretty dead on.
Yep.
Obviously, there's a few artistic license taken with some of the characters meeting and some of the timelines, but I think largely, like, all the financials in this movie are fairly dead on, and it's all real in a certain respect, and it's even scarier for that. I mean, you watch a film like Wolf of Wall Street is a great counterpoint to this movie. Because that's what's going on in the brokerage houses. That's just a bunch of people doing loads of cocaine and fucking making millions and millions of dollars. And so this is the counterpoint of like, oh well, actually no, that but in doing that, not obviously, but in doing that and fucking making all this money, which is coming from nowhere, they are just fucking everyone in the country over, in the world, really.
Yeah,
this was a global crisis. I think we shouldn't forget this movie is quite American focused in a lot of ways. And America, I think, got the brunt of it, but it's spread.
Times. I mean, in the UK, it was RBS, wasn't it? It was and Northern Rock as being the ones where they basically over leveraged. They over leveraged. They did not have the cash, and so and as we see later in this movie, all these fucking banks got bailed out, and they knew they would. They knew they would be bailed out because it would. The financial system is so entrenched.
For some reason, Lehman Brothers. I was watching that documentary.
I think it's because they're an investment
Inside
bank.
Man with Russell Crowe. Not Russell Crowe. God damn it.
Firstly, you're going to have to explain how you botched that joke. So
I know. Well, basically, I'm a white guy racist. So I said Russell Crowe when I, in fact, meant Clive Owen.
Yes.
Which is a Spike Lee movie.
Inside Job, which is a documentary.
No, not the animated series that came out a couple of years ago. No, the documentary.
Yes, the documentary, which was made in 2008 or 9, I think.
2010.
Thanks. And is kind of based on the book. I think it's kind of the similar things going on there in terms of the storytelling, and also
more into the roots of it. I think.
Also, did you not notice the presentation? Did you not notice that there was similar, the kind of like the pausing for a moment to talk about how a certain thing works and then carrying on? I think they very much were influenced by that documentary.
Very reminiscent of the other guys.
Mm-hmm.
At the end of that movie, the whole thing is about a pension fund.
Out of nowhere, it makes no sense. You're like, what?
Yeah, it's out of nowhere. But then over the credits, we get this obviously big fuck you to corporate America and the financial crash and stuff like that. So it's obviously something Adam McKay feels really strongly about. And the documentary, which he's not affiliated with, is using a lot of the same graphics. I think it's actually a really well designed documentary from that point of view. Of like, it actually makes it really easy to understand, even better than this movie, obviously, because this is a movie.
Yeah,
to understand this like incredibly complex issue, because it goes back to sort of like the 70s and the 80s, and it talks to all the people, and it talks about why this movie never really goes into why the system isn't regulated. Like they're talking about the ratings agencies, and they go and see the lady about the ratings, and she basically says, well, if we don't give them the ratings they want, they'll take their business elsewhere. And it's like,
it's
you're the system, you're the system in place to
yeah.
to ensure that like sound financial, not obviously there's a risk in the stock market, there's a risk in investment, but like you're the people who are there to say like this is the baseline of this is a fairly reliable stock versus this is a totally inflated fucking subprime mortgage bullshit.
I
And
know. I
and
feel that
the
they
documentary goes into why the fucking lobbyists. There are 3,000 lobbyists for the stock market. I think in America, there's about 5 lobbyists per congressman. Like that's how much money they spend to make sure that they aren't regulated, so that they can continue, and they do, to fucking just make bucketfuls of cash at the expense of investors. It's disgusting. Absolutely drives me wild.
it's crazy. And I think, you know, when you look at the who's to blame for the financial crash, based on this movie and based on the documentary as well, I'd actually like to read the book. I think it'd be very interesting. I think
Yeah.
the rating agencies must have the lion's share of blame, because capitalists be capitalists. They're going to do what they like. Like fucking what? The banks are immoral? I am shocked, aghast.
For me, it all comes down to the government, because the rating agencies aren't government departments;
No,
they are
no, but
businesses.
really though, the point of them is they're very clear. They're very clear when you watch the interviews. They say that in the document.
They
This
say
is our opinion.
our opinion. But
This
the
is our
trouble is, Sam,
opinion.
the trouble is, if that was a federally in the US, if that was a federally backed ratings agency
Yeah.
who were regularly audited and inspected to a high standard, this could not happen. The subprime mortgage crisis could not have happened.
But then we
if there was
wouldn't
the
get
barest
CDOs.
minimum of regulation.
But then we wouldn't get CDOs. We basically wouldn't get the American economy and the British economy. We're a service economy. London is, you know, the city is a huge. So all of these things
Only
is
city,
like,
only city on the British Isles. You know that. It's an unknown bit of trivia.
But it's what this film is going for, isn't it? It's what this film is going for, to drag us back from the
Sorry.
the anger. And no, I'm with you, but you know this. But this film is really trying to pin down that anger. It's really trying to articulate it as we
I think
go
it's
through
doing a good job of it as well.
Oh,
What
it
do you
is.
think of? I was going to say, we've talked about Steve Carell. Let's round out the cast for a little bit, just briefly, and then we can sort of get more maybe into more of the stuff you want to talk about. So, what did you think of the? We should bring it. Well, I don't care. The young guys and Brad Pitt are an interesting point in this movie.
John Magaro is Charlie Geller, and Finn Wittrock. John Magaro plays, I think, a insane asylum person in The Dark Knight, I believe.
Yes.
Yeah,
so.
he's the one who's going to shoot. He's dressed up as a cop, isn't he? Anyway, no, I think they're really good, and I think they're like another factor, another track on another thread that runs.
They, for me, exist as the characters that they know the least, so they're kind of exposition-y, like in a good way, because they know the least about the actual stock market. And I think the first scene they're in is basically they, with their $30 million like investment fund, not even a hedge fund, investment fund, are like trying to apply for some high-flying license, and the guy basically like,
or whatever it is,
meets them and says, right, well, you're fucking like $1.5 billion short of the equity requirement. And they're like, oh god, we know nothing. But because they don't know anything, and they've got the fucking like magic guru in Brad Pitt. And again, let's maybe take it aside from the factual basis of this and just talk about what we see in the movie. Like, the Brad Pitt character kind of exists, and we get loads of scenes, good scenes, him explaining stuff to them, him opening doors for them, and it's kind of like, it makes this movie much more approachable than if they knew a lot more, or if we maybe had again, if there was any more of the Bale stuff, I think this movie would be quite like, what are we doing? You kind of
Yeah.
need the other stuff to explain what he's doing and for it to be impactful.
It keeps it light and it keeps it moving, and that's where I think, you know, if I was writing a screenplay of this, and this is an Academy Award-winning screenplay, and I think, you know, if you're writing a screenplay, you should study this. You should look it up, and you should study it because it is so tight, it is so razor sharp, and it moves in a way that I think is so important. Like we go from Christian Bale like staring at a screen, Excel document, or playing the drums and
There's a lot of
shouting,
that. Or fucking listening to music, or reading the Shannara Chronicles.
okay, great, all right. And then we go to, you know, the bros, broing it up. Steve Carell in his you know, his bro thing, Fairpoint, whatever.
They're going
All
around
that.
shouting. There's a lot of like, will
Fuck
you go in
fuck
and
you.
politely tell those people to fuck off? And he goes, "Hi, I've just spoken to Steve Carell, whose character's name I can't remember."
Yeah.
And he says, "Fuck off."
Fuck off. Yeah.
Like brilliant writing.
And but then the younger guys, you're right. There is an exposition element there, and it also means that we end up discovering with them exactly what's happening. Now, again, let's not lose sight of the fact that these guys are evil fucking capitalists too. And it's actually what makes me laugh. Like anyone can take $100,000 that he saved. This guy saved $100,000 and converted it into 30 million. Anyone can do that. If we pulled all of our income together and we were clever enough,
and
we
waited
could
for
make
75 years. Yeah, we
Yeah.
might have £100,000.
no, but we could really we could make $30 million. Anyone can do this. Anyone can do this. And this is like the American dream thing, isn't it? This is the capitalist, is that you could do it. And these guys were very exceptional, but really, chances are 9 times out of 10, these guys are going to lose all of that money, or they're going to make marginal gains because, you know, there is only so much money in the system, and the big guys are eating it all up. But it's kind of there as a reminder of that, I think. And I think once you combine that with Brad Pitt, I think Brad Pitt's production company made this, which is why he's in it.
Because he's not a huge role, and I think it's good because I think Brad Pitt's the kind of star who would draw focus if he was one of these main characters. And because
he's a naff actor, though, isn't it? I don't think he's good in this.
I don't know.
Think he's good in this.
I don't think he's good in. I don't think he's great.
He looks like he's playing.
He's fine.
He's doing that. Like he's Rusty in Ocean's 11, pretending to be someone else. That's just what I think. I just like, take that fucking fake mustache off and go and help Clooney. You know, what are you doing? Like, where's Terry Benedict?
I come down on the more forgiving line of Brad Pitt. I think he's fine in this role. I think he's doing a workman-like. Huh?
Name me a strong Brad Pitt performance post 2002. Go. Anything. Anyone you like.
I will have to consult a filmography.
Exactly. You can't do that. Anyway, let's not get bogged down by Brad Pitt and his mediocrity. I was going to mention something in this. Yes, to do with these two guys. There's a great bit, and again, I love this in filmmaking. I love it. There's a great bit where, when they've been rejected for that financial instrument that they need to make big trades, and they're embarrassed, and he picks up the article written by what's his face, Christian Bale, I think.
Yeah.
Or Jared Vanette, played by who's he? Christ, what's his name?
The banker, Ryan Gosling.
Ryan Gosling, who I think Ryan Gosling is great. I think he's really fun.
He's another actor where we're going to have a bit of a disagreement because I generally think Ryan Gosling is. I generally don't enjoy him. I just like there's something about him. I think he's really good in this, and I think he was really good in The Nice Guys with Russell Crowe, aforementioned Russell Crowe. But like aside from that, I'm not really on the Ryan Gosling train.
I'll concede that. But the thing that I wanted to highlight was he picks up the article and he's reading away and says, "Wow, you know, looks like the housing market's going to collapse. Whoa, what do you know?" And then he turns to the camera and says, Well, this isn't exactly how it happened. In reality, I heard from his friend who told me that to read the article, and that's how. But anyway, like, and you just think that is fucking
It's
ballsy.
brave
That
in a movie, isn't
is
it? Yeah.
ballsy as shit, isn't it? To be like, oh, for a second, we're going to break the fourth wall in a way that is utterly not necessary. Like, they did not need to do that. I would happily just accept the fact that he picked up the flyer, just at our lowest moment, we managed to find this crazy thing that helped us secure our fortune. And you're like,
It's at the
well,
lowest moment, Sam. It's also a minute and a half into the first scene they're in this movie.
yeah, but just after being thoroughly embarrassed, I just think that's great filmmaking to be like, to really own the presentation that they're going for.
It's funny. It moves the movie on and gets you to your next like bit with them.
Yeah.
They have some really fun bits in this movie. There's a great scene, which is again like, oh my god, this is terrifying. Why is nobody policing this industry? When they meet Karen Gillingham,
Karen Gillan.
Karen Gillan, sorry. I apologize for my
Karen Gillingham.
dementia. I don't know. Adding extra syllables, Sam. When they meet her in the Las Vegas hotel, and she's like, she used to work for an investigative.
No, she still does. She
banking.
works for the FCC. Oh, not the FCC, the SEC, Securities and Exchange Commission.
Yeah, but she's going to go and work for.
She's trying to get a job at Goldman Sachs, isn't she? She's trying to get a job.
And they're like, oh, but surely you can't go straight from working for the SEC to going to Goldman Sachs. She's like, yeah, of course I can. There's nothing. There's no rule to say that you can't do that. And you're like, oh yeah, because banking is corrupt as shit.
And they also talk about how the SEC's had its budget cut by successive Republican governments, and so is like, well, no, we don't have any. Even if we wanted to investigate, we don't have the resources or capacity to do so. So, I'm just going to sit here in the sun and try and get a job with that guy. You know what I mean? Like, it's.
But again, it's kind of that good. It's good filmmaking because it's funny. And again, I think this movie is like kind of like low key, very funny in bits.
Oh, it's super funny.
Like for a movie about the subject matter, and none of the characters seem to be having any fun in any of the scenes.
Yeah,
it's really amusing. And again, it comes down to the competency of the screenplay. It deserved that Oscar. I also think the edit is amazing. The edit in this movie is astounding.
Yes.
For me, that's where the movie lives or dies. Like if you fuck this edit up, this movie's trash.
So hold on 2 seconds. Because we very, very rarely talk about the editors. It's very rare that we actually sit and talk about who's sat there with the director cutting up the movie. A guy called Hank Corwin. No, I haven't heard of him either. Nominated for 3 Oscars, including The Big Short, Vice from 2018, and Don't Look Up. So there is a. So
he's an Adam McKay guy.
He's an Adam McKay guy. There is a. Well, at least Don't Look Up. What else is it? So it's kind of like there's a thread there, isn't there? There's a thread of this type of filmmaking that I think he's really good at. This kind of like, what it almost reminded me of. The editing almost reminded me of a YouTube video. Like that's the tone that I was getting. When you're watching, hey guys, welcome to my channel. Today we're going to be just talking about blah 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 blah, and then you have a freeze and the little ding, and then someone, another screen pops up, and what's that you say? Well, it's a great thing that blah blah blah. It's just that energy, constant movement. It always moves. We get lots of like hard cuts, and we get lots of quite abrasive edits, which all add to the overall feel and tone of like the movement in this movie, and the kind of dissonance that you're supposed to feel a little bit by how fucked up it's all these flashing things on the screen, and pictures of people's trauma and all this stuff.
But it's supposed to be quite offensive, though, isn't it? It's supposed to make you outraged. It's kind of like what the movie's going for. The success of this movie. Just as a sidebar, when I wasn't listening to you then, I was Googling it. Hacksaw Ridge won the Best Film Editing Oscar the year this was nominated. And I think that's a crime because that is not a great movie.
I have not seen that. I have not seen that.
But I suppose maybe like technically there's a lot more. There's effects, so maybe it's just that. But then you've got fucking special effects.
Well,
Oscars,
the
like,
Academy's bullshit anyway. The
the Academy's bullshit because it's a bunch of rich white men, much like the stock exchange.
Yeah, they probably didn't appreciate all of being called out directly by this movie to say you're a bunch of fuckers, aren't you? Even the good guys, you're profiteering off the misery of tens of millions. You fuckers.
Absolutely, yeah. I love the false flag at the end of this movie, which
Ah.
again, I think is like it quite brave to put this in a movie where like everyone who saw this movie knows that no one was punished after
No.
the 2008 financial
No.
crash, but they have this little scene where they go, and of course, financial regulations were brought in to make sure this never happened again, and all the top people went to prison. And it's like, oh no, sorry, that didn't happen. Everyone walked.
Just kidding.
Everyone got hundreds of millions of dollars.
Yeah,
I
just
think
this
that's
one
like,
guy. This one
but
guy.
it's nice and calm, and it's just like, oh yeah, it's fine. There's one guy going to prison, and he wasn't even that big a deal. Like, it's fine.
I love Ryan Gosling. Like, he's
a
like,
good choice for the voiceover.
you're judging me.
Character in the movie.
I can feel it. It's palpable. And I think that is a great, like, interesting take.
And I think the movie actually maybe under-explains, perhaps. Like, well, it sort of touches on it, like why Ryan Gosling is getting so much money at the end of this movie, and the reason he's getting so much money because, and the documentary goes into this. It's kind of like because the banks and just like the mortgage companies, everyone, they prioritize quick money.
Yeah.
So Ryan Gosling gets this enormous bonus check because what he's done is bring all this cash in the short term, even though the banks had to be bailed out. Like, ultimately, that's for the bank.
Wins.
That's just more money, isn't it?
More
they had
money.
to be bailed out, yeah, because they didn't
carry
have any
on.
money. But that's not a repayable loan. There's no fucking repercussions.
No, they can just.
The taxpayer just wrote you a check.
They can just carry on doing what they're doing, and let's not forget.
Let's not do this for another 20 years, or we'll be in some hot water.
Yeah, yeah. Q 2022. No. What?
We're ahead of schedule.
What it really pins is that you don't have this movie. You don't have this type of film without all of the bullshit that leads to it, obviously. But what I think is important, why I think this is an important movie is because it's polemical. It's intentionally trying to knock these fuckers down a peg, and it's doing that through the lens of these fairly likable characters. But it's frustrating in a lot of ways, and I think this ending, that scene you're talking about, where he says, everyone went to prison, it was fine, just kidding, is like is again more self-awareness. It's a movie that is self-aware because it's like, look, we know you're going to get to the end of this film and you're going to know that nothing happened. There were no consequences.
You get to the start of this movie and be like, you already know there were no consequences because we lived through it.
Happened to these people. They just fucking got away with it and individually got rich and filthy rich, while normal people, working class people who are probably contributing much more to the world than these fucking parasites are, ended up with nothing, broken and unable to even feed their families.
Taxes, Sam, ultimately,
exactly.
It's people who can't afford to not pay their taxes.
Yeah.
And those people are the people that end up paying $150 billion bailout. It's not the banks who are having to be bailed out and are obviously not paying their fair share of taxes. And it's...
I know. It's you know what it is. It's just it's so upsetting. But at the same time, and this is why this film is a fucking masterpiece, I think. I honestly do think, I'm not just throwing that word around. I think this is a masterpiece. I think this is a modern classic that
I think it's as good a movie as we've done on the podcast.
I think it's a modern classic that isn't really that well appreciated in it just now. Yeah, it's like 89% Rotten Tomatoes. So I'm not saying that it was just fell under the radar. I don't think it's had the cultural impact that it necessarily will have in maybe 20 or 30 years, because once we go back and we're really starting to get into the history of this, we're really starting to review this time, from that 25-year plus lens, and then on, we're going to be trying. Well, you know what we're going to be trying to do, just like we do now. We're going to be trying to go back in a media time to the 90s. We that's what we do all the time. We go back to the 90s because we're like, oh, it's great. This is our nostalgia. And when the kids who are even younger than us are watching this, and when they go back in 30 years, 20 years time, they're going to be doing the same thing. And I think this is going to be a touchstone picture that defines a time and a place and an era for so many people, because number one, it's really fucking fun to watch. It's really well made, and it also touches on like this deep-seated anger and fucking just depressing shit that we will be looking for, because that's what 2008 represents.
But it's also, I think, the reason it's not, because I agree, I don't think this movie made an enormous splash. A great point there, Sam, is that I saw Hacksaw Ridge in cinemas the year this came out. Didn't see this.
It's because you were a fucking idiot in 2008, 2015.
An idiot now. Why justify it by the year? But like, I think
you're more urbane with a podcast now. So
I think part of that is the hard sell of like, ultimately, Sam, and this is the reason I didn't want to do this as a podcast. Even though I've seen it, even know it was good.
Swings,
ultimately,
callback.
If you say to somebody, oh, do you want to go and see this movie about the 2008 financial crash? No. Of course you don't. Of course you don't. It's a great movie. Absolutely everyone should watch it. But ultimately, if it comes down to it, it's a fucking Friday night. Like, you're not going to go and watch this film. And the people didn't.
I'm going to go see, what's happening in 2015? I'm going to go see Star Wars. Is Star Wars out in 2015? Force Awakens, maybe?
7? Yeah.
We could go see Force Awakens. It is 2015. God, I'm good. So we could go see Force Awakens instead. Now, we didn't see this in the cinema. I don't know when I watched it. Probably on Netflix. And so, hey, I'm part of the problem. But again, not everyone has to see it. But what I'm saying is that I think with more time, it will become one of those like defining movies.
I think so, and I think it will be something that, like, in 10 years will be, if we still have streaming TV in 10 years, I think will be rediscovered quite a lot. I think it's going to be like,
I think it'll be literally rediscovered in the after the Moisture Wars, in a can under the desert.
Well, it's prescient because the last slide of the movie is telling us that we basically like saying that the guy, Christian Bale's character, is now like talking about water.
Investing entirely in water. Yeah.
But what I mean is, you remember when Trump was elected to office and Idiocracy kind of had a little bit of a resurgence.
Yes.
And actually, if you read about it, this movie did have a bit of a bump along with Wolf of Wall Street, kind of like in the most recent economic downturn is the polite word I'm going to use for the total fucking shit show of generational poverty we're currently living through.
Post-COVID, yeah.
But like, it did have a slight upturn, and I think that in 5-10 years, it's going to be much bigger, because I think it's easier to look at these things from a distance. And it's a shame. It's a shame that a movie like this is never going to, be a cinema goer's favorite. This movie's never going to like sweep awards because it's just too polarizing. I use the word polarizing because, like, obviously, if you're invested in these systems, you don't want to watch a movie that's kind of like being like, it's all corrupt and horrible, and people are dying and being made homeless, and it's just a bit much.
It is a bit much. It is a bit much, but I think it's worthy. And I think, again, it's Margot Robbie in a bath explaining it to you. Fuck you. If that's not entertaining, I don't know what is. So
Absolutely.
just no. That's fantastic. Well done, movie. Well done.
So this was a good movie. I'm excited for what we're watching next week because I'm fairly certain it must be Ross's pick.
Well, if he shows up, I am sure that he will be able to pick a movie.
We should pick two movies. Let Ross pick a movie, which I'll watch on Monday at 6:00, 2 hours before we record, and then we'll pick like a secret movie that we watch for when Ross invariably doesn't show up.
Yeah. So we're gonna go for what, like Predator 2
Ooh,
and
we can watch it in person. Ooh,
Citizen Kane.
We can watch a movie in person.
We're gonna be in person for the first time in a long time. Fantastic.
IRL.
I look forward to that. And I think it will be a good test of whether or not we actually do like each other. You know, yeah, we can talk about movies,
it
but
will be a good test of that at all.
have we got anything else to talk about? Have we got
The
anything?
NFL. We can talk about
the
that.
NFL. There we go. Yeah.
Lord of the
Oh,
Rings
yes,
is a really rich vein.
Listener, you are in for a treat. The NFL is back, and so we're going to be peppering in references to obscure football players that you have no interest in. So good luck.
Hey, what we're going to do, Sam, is obviously there's money to be made in America. This movie taught me that there is money on the table. Even if that money doesn't exist, there will be a way to get it.
Yeah.
Right? So
we
need to expand our American operation.
Yeah, I think we can make money on the NFL fantasy. I think that's the level of delusion that we can reach. Hey,
well, that's
look,
just gambling, Sam.
Hey,
that's
hold
just
on,
gambling.
Hold on. It's Margot Robin about to explain fantasy football for us. Fantastic.
Now, this is why James Robinson is going to have a breakout season. Drink champagne. But I could do a decent Australian accent. That would have been maybe funnier. But, you know, I'm not going to lie to myself and pretend I can do a Margot Robbie impression on the fly.
Well, how about you go run a bubble bath and we'll find out in 10 minutes.
I'm not allowed to have a bath, Sam.
Oh. Just laugh. Give us a proper fucking laugh. There we go.
Clip that fake laugh. You just put it.
No. I need to what I'm going to do is I'm going to find one of the funny lines. The 4 or 5 that I put out there for you to set you up. I'm just going to add it on there because I'm going to edit me to be the funny ending of the episode as I do every single week.
Yeah, but you're not going to do like a deep dive, Sam. You're going to go back 20 seconds, maybe.
Yeah, maybe.
Pick the first thing, and then that's it. I know you.
All right, there we go. Look at this weird comment we got.
I know, it's so strange. I saw it and I was like, "That's not related at all."
Natasha Romanenko at the Start 2 Accord was signed on January 3rd, 1993. Russia and the US reduced their strategic nuclear warheads to between 3,000 and 3,500 warheads. Wow, that's actually really interesting. I had
really
not heard.
I'm not sure how it relates
of the Start 2 Accord specifically, but I don't think we've mentioned nuclear war. Other than the references that
we haven't mentioned, actually. To one thing we haven't mentioned.
Yeah, I think we feel we're past that, and actually the moisture wars. That's where we're at. That's our reference.
It's the next thing, yeah.
Come back,
which will be much like the Cold War, except drier.
Well, it'll be cold, yeah.
Well, the energy crisis means it's definitely cold.
Right, let's end the broadcast there. Bye-bye.